So let's move forward to the AI and automation workshop. And this is where we share some knowledge to hopefully inspire other people to see what they could potentially do in their business. So today, Joe Simmons is going to show us the AI CRM Manager that he's been working on. To give you a little bit of context, using your CRM to drive value is a great idea. A couple of years back, Joe and I did some work together. I was applying the kind of integration automation. Joe was working on the CRM side of things, and we were looking at how to leverage the impact of that CRM. The sort of thing that we were looking at was, back then, it was how to minimize product returns by getting the right data into the CRM to enable a consistent stream of onboarding emails to help people get max value from their purchase, so they wouldn't want to send it back. So an intervention we were looking to make. The point being that if your CRM is just a database of contacts, you're leaving value on the table. You want to look for ways to leverage that CRM. But anyhow, that's the sort of stuff we were looking at previously. Joe's a CRM guy, and sorry I've taken up so much time today, Joe. Hope not left you squeezed. So over to you. Let's see what you've been working on.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction, Graham. Can everyone hear me okay and see my screen and all that stuff? Yeah, great stuff. I think there were some really interesting points raised in the conversation that was had, and I just want to talk about a couple of those before I zoom into the presentation that I've done. But one of the things that I'm conscious of, I mean, one of the things that drove me towards doing this work with the AI that I'm working with, I'm using Claude for this experiment, is that the job that Graham's referring to is my previous employer, but I've moved into a role as a digital marketing manager for a London house, a finance reporting house in London. And I've been asked to wear multiple hats: CRM hat, digital marketing hat, SEO manager hat, website optimization, conversion rate optimization, and I'm kind of looking after the whole breadth of the digital landscape for the business. That's a lot of hats to wear, so there's no way I can do all of those jobs in one week. It's just a bit crazy. On top of that, I run my own small business, which is why I'm here. And then you have the situation where, as a person who's trying to run their own small business, particularly trying to start one up, you have to put a lot of time and effort into that to try and make the success and try and build on momentum and that kind of stuff. And when do you find the time for that? And on top of that, I've got 3 small kids. So I don't sleep very much, but I thought to myself, I've got to find a way that work doesn't take over my life. How can I improve my efficiency? And I've been very lucky in the sense that my current employer has said 2 things. One, we really want to embrace AI. We really want to be at the forefront of what AI can offer. So I'm part of a focus group in the office that gives me the opportunity to spend time and effort really trying to hone how AI supports me in my day-to-day. And I can be completely open up front about that. I don't need to worry about going, well, I've done all this stuff. Aren't I productive? I can go, well, actually, Claude's helped me get to this place. This is what Claude has produced, and I've worked with it to get there. And there are some pitfalls with that as well, which I'm going to share as part of this conversation. But that kind of gives you a picture of who I am, where I am, why I'm so busy, and how I'm trying to make things more efficient. So that's where I was starting off with this. So what I've done is when I started, I had a meeting with one of our agency, a guy called Rob, who I think is going to join the cohort at some stage. He's a guy who works for an agency called My Bright Digital, and he came in, and I want to give credit where credit's due. He opened my eyes to what LLMs can offer, the different LLMs that are out there, and kind of gave me a lot of this thought leadership to start me down this path. So what he suggested was that I came out of the meetings that I had with him really enthusiastic about building this CRM manager, because I said to myself, okay, well, I've got all this CRM knowledge. I've got 15 years experience working in CRM and how I understand how marketing automation works. I've got all that knowledge. How can I train an LLM to be something that assists me in getting that work done exponentially faster, so that I can focus on learning the SEO strategies, delivering the strategic goals, and taking on all these other elements of my job? So I went away and I sat down and I said, right, working with Claude, what am I going to do? And I started off fundamentally looking at what's our platform set up? what does our technical landscape look like? What information do I need to put into this CRM manager so that it has some context of what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, and can I make it communicate with me in a way that's going to make me efficient, so I don't have to worry about double checking so many answers. And there's a bit of a story around that as well. And I gave it many of my key pain points. So I identified some of the issues that we were experiencing. And one thing that I'll talk about in this presentation is using account engagement, which for those of you who don't know is what Pardot has become in Salesforce. And using their engagement studio, it takes about 10 minutes for data to flow through each node within these automations, which is just painfully slow in this day and age. So I was trying to come up with a workaround for that, given our technical landscape. And the other thing I had in the back of my mind was, are we going to migrate to HubSpot or migrate to another platform? And HubSpot was the leader in terms of the ones we were considering. So I built that into the LLM as well. And I started by when I was setting up the AI so that it would support me in the way that I wanted it to. One of the things I thought about was, okay, how do I let the LLM understand kind of who I am, what my level of experience is, and how to communicate with me around the solutions that it's providing. So I thought, well, okay, well, I'll upload my CV, I'll upload my active project briefs, I'll upload any technical documentation that I've got around the platforms that I can find. And I'll input some platform limitations that I'm aware of, and I can put all this stuff into the framework of the projects within Claude. So for those of you who don't use Claude, Claude gives you the ability, when you use the paid model, to create projects, and that's essentially what I've done. So I've created a project and I've trained that project with all of this information so that it gives me these responses that I'm looking for.
So Joe, just on that one, can you just elaborate? So for the group, what is the impact of you uploading your CV to Claude in terms of that behavior you want? So how does that change its behavior?
What it does is when it came back to that response, its answer was fundamentally, I don't need to give you context. I can just give you the answer. I can give you the technical answer. I know that you'll understand certain amounts of coding. And it's made the answers that it gives me much more succinct. It doesn't pad it out with a lot of explanation. It just goes, here's what you need to do. Here's the technical abilities of how to do it. Here's the code that you might need to use.
So now Claude knows how to communicate with you because it knows your experience and skill level based on your CV.
Exactly. And I'm in the process of building another project, which is going to be my digital marketing project manager or project support, which is configured in a completely different way, because I'm not an SEO expert. So how can I get Claude to help me with keyword research and understanding those principles, but from a level of somebody who's coming at it from a much less experienced position? Okay. I think that's going to take longer to train, because one of the key issues I've talked about with a few people around this, and the agency that helped with this idea and all of that, and I do mention it in the presentation, but you have to know if the answer that the AI is giving you is correct. So you have to have human oversight, because as someone who doesn't know very much about SEO, I have no idea if the information I'm getting is useful or will work. And even as a very experienced technical CRM manager, I've been taken down garden paths by Claude that I've spent a whole week testing solutions, building stuff that Claude's recommended, following step-by-step instructions, and getting to the end of it and going, this still doesn't work. I need to go right back to the beginning and start again. So that's been a real learning curve, and that's something that it's still very much an evolving project, because as you learn more, you can teach the LLM more, and it can use that then as context to correct its answers going forward. And one of the things that is in the market at the moment, I've seen a lot of research coming out saying that actually most LLMs, for the purposes of CRM work, tends to be not very accurate. Don't know the reasons why, because I haven't read all the documentation around it, but it is something that I'm really mindful of as I build this. I'm trying to teach it to give me correct and accurate work. But this is one of the example directives that I gave. It was just help me get the most from account engagement now whilst building a case for HubSpot in the future.
And account engagement, that's like a Salesforce product, right?
Yes, it's Salesforce's B2B marketing automation solution, and it's very old, very clunky, and I think needs a good facelift and a bit of rejigging. But we're also on the basic plan of that within the office, so it's not, we don't have the all bells and whistles version. We've got a very, very basic version of it. This was the double opt-in project that I started off, and what I was experiencing was, because of our technical landscape, using the different forms that we have and the way that they're connected with Pardot and stuff, I was sort of led down this path of having to create an engagement studio program, which was meaning that once somebody signed up on the website, it would take 10 minutes for the email confirmation to reach them to say, are you sure you want to opt in? And I think from a CRM background, 10 minutes is way too long. It should happen in real time, and there are options within Pardot to make it happen in real time, but because of our technical landscape, they weren't actually feasible. So I worked with Claude for about 40 hours, going back and forward, testing different solutions, looking at different options involving Zapier, building APIs and building some custom connections and that kind of stuff to speed everything up. And I got it down to about 2 minutes, making this thing work. But each time I was hitting a blocker going, well, that's not the optimal solution. That doesn't quite work. Why doesn't that work? Tweaking that around. And then, but I was just happily working with Claude, having these conversations back and forward, giving it screenshots, giving it more context, giving it the reasons why it wasn't working. And each time it would reassess what it could do. And then I would try these other things. And then I had a chat with our agency and said, oh, this is what the problem is. They said, why don't you use gravity forms and just trigger the email from there? It happens in real time. And it's like I've spent 40 hours with Claude where I could have just found such a simple solution. So what I did was I've used that information to say to Claude, always take a step back, look for the simplest solution, and then when you do suggest a solution, tell me how long you think it's going to take, what other options there might be, but always think about our native technology that we've got and try and think within that rather than going all around the houses. And that's something that you have to be really careful of with using something like Claude to be able to deliver this kind of work, because that's something that really did waste a lot of my time. But what it's really good at, what I have found that it's really, really helpful at, is creating technical documentation or creating business case solutions, and sort of structuring problems. And one of the things that I do with it on a nearly daily basis is we use Fireflies as one of our meeting recorders, which documents everything that's discussed. And I've automated Fireflies so that it connects with my tasks list in Microsoft To Do. So every morning I come in and I categorize my task list in terms of priority, and then I take that task list, put it into Claude, say, this is my task list for today, help me prioritize it, help me identify what you can complete for me, and give me a kind of to-do list for today. And Claude's brilliant at doing that. It assesses what I've got to do, it does the priorities, gets the due dates that are in there, and helps me prioritize what needs to be done. And then I find myself saying, what within my tasks can you do? And that might be, you've got to draft an email to somebody in the business about something, and Claude can help me do that. And then it's a copy and paste job. Not really, because I like to rewrite things, but having done the sort of rough draft of what those emails are really helps me think about it efficiently. So I'm just going, right, I'm just editing that. I wouldn't quite say it that way. Stick it in, send it off. And it saves me a lot of time. And one of the things it did help me do is produce a 7-page technical guide, which was a step-by-step guide of how to build what I was building in Zapier and how to do the APIs and this kind of stuff. So that was really helpful, and that was massive. Like, in terms of producing the documentation, it saved me hours and hours and hours of work. But yeah, one of the key lessons I was going to share is making sure that it's simplicity first, and really trying to keep it simple, because before doing that, over the last week or so, I've really, as I said, spent so many hours going down rabbit holes after rabbit holes and after rabbit holes. And one of the funny things that happened was I was working through trying to get the API connection between Zapier and Pardot working and passing the bearer token and that kind of stuff. And I'm not that great with APIs. I can figure them out. They just take me a little while, and I'm getting more experience with them. But I was working through it, making the connections and kind of knocking off these challenges each time they came up with Claude. And I stopped and I thought, hang on a minute, I've done this before. And I wrote in Claude, it feels like we're going in circles. And Claude's response was, oh yeah, you're absolutely right, we are. And it's one of those things that reminded me that Claude particularly and other LLMs are not intelligent in the same sense as we think of a person who's intelligent. It's helpful in the sense that it will help you identify how to do something. It can help you with the steps of achieving that, but it's a tool that is focused on the parameters that you give it. And if you don't have that human oversight, it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit warren of stuff that can go very, very wrong, take you a lot of time. But this is the real impact that it's had on me in terms of my work. So as I said, it's organizing my daily work. It's helping me get my to-do list prioritized and helping me deliver those really simple tasks that it can do. Particularly content creation is really, really helpful. Although we don't use LLMs for content creation for our marketing output, that all has to be done by a human. And there's the talk in the business and with agencies and stuff is that there's going to be so much AI generated content by businesses that don't have the time to put the human oversight in front of it, that so much marketing collateral will look and appear to be AI. And you can see it on LinkedIn with loads of LinkedIn posts that have the kind of stench of AI around them. And there's a lot of comments on them that say, oh, this looks like AI. You can recognize the different punctuation they're using and that kind of stuff. And we definitely want to make sure that we're moving away from that and being what we hope will be a standout in the market by being human driven. But one of the things I was going to show you as well is I was going to literally copy this prompt in and see how it goes. But it's great at creating presentations. One of the things that I created this presentation in AI, did it yesterday. Graham messaged me and said, are you still all right for tomorrow? I said, yeah, I better create that presentation. So I went to my Claude project and said, right, create me a presentation. This is the goal. This is what I want to do. It's all based on what I'm doing with you for this project. And it generated this presentation. This is I think the 11th version of the presentation that I created in 1 hour. No, this is version 10, sorry. The 11th version didn't come out so well, so I reverted back to version 10. But Claude created all of the HTML, all of the functionality. I punched in a couple of hex codes so that it used the color scheme that I wanted it to use, and it did the whole lot. And I just edited and tweaked the prompt to make sure that it was given sort of geared to the way I wanted it to be. So what I was going to do is I was just going to copy this prompt, and I promise you I have not actually done this yet. So this is the first time I'm doing it, just to see what comes out of Claude. So it does this and it will chug through some code. It takes a minute. But I quite like watching it. Kind of imagine it as somebody working in a factory somewhere, typing incredibly quickly.
That's your colleague, Joe. It's
yeah.
Your teammate working for you.
Yeah.
I know we're almost at the hour, so anyone who's got a drop off at 1, then feel free to, if you've got questions, just drop them into the WhatsApp group. But we can keep rolling.
I'll leave that chugging so that we can move on. So practical tips that I've learned over the course of working with Claude is make sure you build as much comprehensive context as you can and put that context back into Claude. I think that including my expertise level around CRM has really helped Claude communicate with me in a way that I find useful. It means I'm not wasting my time reading rubbish. I'm actually reading stuff that's helping. And be really clear with it. And if you ask for multiple options as well, it means that you can assess the options and go, well, that actually is going to work. I know from my experience that will work. And then you can work on, then it saves you that time of kind of doing what I did, which was my mistake, was just going out, accepting the first answer and trying to make it work and then realizing it wouldn't. And one of the things I've discovered as well is that sometimes Claude needs a lunch break. And I think this is true of most LLMs as well, but essentially it's around their fair use policy. So if you're creating a lot of documents like this, or using a lot of code, or doing a lot of screenshots and that kind of stuff, it uses up those credits really quickly. And typically Claude comes to me around midday and says, I need to stop until 3 o'clock. You've used up your usage. So I like to think of that as Claude's lunch break. And then, yeah, don't accept the first answer blindly. Assume AI knows. Don't assume that AI knows the constraints, because it doesn't. And ask for it to be simpler. Do that. And remember to just keep it simple. What I've done is, does my platform have this feature? Am I using all existing capabilities within the tool that I've got? Is it going to take me 5 minutes, or is it going to take me 50 hours? What's the kind of time frame we're talking about? And then who maintains it later? And sort of adding these simplicity, efficiency checks into your prompts can really help. And this is the new, so the better directive that I've built is, and Claude has helped me build this directive as well, is saying, I need to achieve a specific task. Please list the simplest solution first. Show me 3 to 5 options ranked by complexity. Consider these tools I already have, and I list the tools. Flag if I'm overcomplicating this, and what would take less than 30 minutes. And I'm yet to kind of dive into how this better directive works, but I've added it to the project. And then let's see where this is at. So that's producing now. There you go. So this is my business case that AI has just generated for me, talking about the performance issues, the time delay, the time it takes to do things, hidden costs, operational risks, Pardot setup, 44 hours, industry standard 30 minutes, this kind of stuff. So it's really, it's visually engaging. I could quite happily sit with this with my manager and take her through the reasons why we want to migrate. And I can see already that some of the details in here is slightly incorrect, because HubSpot costs more than Pardot, but I can go in and I can tweak that and I can adjust that. And even if I don't, all of this stuff is really useful in terms of ideation and giving me the output that I need. And what I can do is I simply do what I did with this presentation and download that as HTML. And then I've got a file that I can share, I can open up in a browser, and it's a reasonably decent presentation. So that's literally just from that prompt that I've not done before. And then just to give you a view of this is the project itself. And what I do is, routinely, if I'm having a conversation with Claude about something, because of that usage limitation, one of the things I have to remember to do, and this is perhaps one of the key limitations, is that you have to remember to summarize a conversation. Because if you're having longer and longer chats, each time you send a request through to the LLM, it uses the whole chat's context, and that uses up a lot more usage. So you can summarize those chats and create a document that brings all of that learning into sort of a succinct way of referring to it, and then you add that to the project. And it is as simple as I click in there. I think I can do it with this one. Where's that? Sorry, I've lost my place now.
But just on that, Joe,
yeah,
there was no technical capability required. You didn't have to build something. This was all just configuring Claude with prompts and documents.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. So you do that, and you just copy, and I can then copy to project. So you literally just click and play, copy to project, and that then becomes an asset within the project documentation, which it then uses for reference further down the line. So you can, in here I've got the API documentation of how to do Pardot API version 4 custom field stuff, which the LLM helped me produce. I've got in there I won't show you, but I've got the Salesforce contract agreement. So that the LLM's got all the information about the commercials related to our particular instance of Pardot, and all of these extra contexts, and you've got quite a lot of usage that you can use. I've only used 2%, but the key sort of overall prompt is this. So you set your project instructions, and this I add to all the time. I'm coming up with little bits of extra stuff to add to, and that's got our database size, the mailing usage, that kind of stuff. And then here is where I've added this new directive. So when I propose a new task, especially when I may involve technical solutions or platforms that we're using, always remember to please search for the simplest solution first. So Claude will always use this as its sort of model for working with me. And all of that evolves so that you get hopefully the outcome you're looking for. But what it's really done is it has helped massively with my technical understanding of how things work. It's really helped me learn Pardot and learn what Pardot can and can't do, because even though I've used loads of CRM platforms in the past, Pardot was a new one for me. So it's helped me test it and test its limitations and find out some of the inner workings of it, which I think has been really helpful. And it has enabled me to shift my focus from tactical to more to strategic. And where it's really helped me create really good documentation that I can then share with the wider business, share with my management. And instead of spending 4 hours creating a presentation, or 5 or 6 hours creating the technical documentation, it takes minutes. Once you've done the sort of heavy lifting of prepping the project and working with it, you just say, create me documentation for this, and it just creates it. But this is really, really important. Just because AI can build a complex solution doesn't mean you need one. And if you don't know to catch it, it can waste hours. So be really mindful of that. I did have some common questions. This is this rabbit hole thing. Be really careful about that. What if AI gives the wrong advice? Always verify with an official document. And one of the things you can do, there's another LLM out there which is called Notebook LLM. I think it's a Notebook LM, something like that.
Yeah.
Graham, you know this one, but you can, for those of you who don't know, you can upload trusted information, stuff that you know is factual or stuff that you trust, and it can use just that information to be able to sort of convert it into even a podcast for you, so you can draw out learning from that trusted source. Whereas other LLMs look for look through the whole internet, and sometimes you don't necessarily get accurate information. So yeah, be mindful of that. And then if you're worried about security, we're very lucky. We've got 3 or 4 models in the office that we're allowed to use, but they have to be through a paid account, and so it can get quite pricey for smaller businesses. But just be mindful of your security concerns. And I don't put any PII into an LLM at all. It's all anonymized. It's all just talking about concepts rather than specific people. And then, yeah, one thing that I found is picking that one task. So actually doing my task list every day has helped massively. Prioritizing that's really saved me a lot of time, keeps me focused. And with the projects I'm working on, particularly with the CRM stuff, I run it past Claude, check the ideas, make sure it's workable, and then I can do it. And then I don't have to waste time thinking about the solution. I can just get Claude to do the thinking, and I just assess and implement. I like this. AI doesn't replace your expertise, it amplifies it. So that goes back to what you were saying, Graham.
Perfect. That's great, Jay. Thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.